So, uncovered the car yesterday. I was going to take it for a little bit of a spin, and I was just giving it a little check over like I usually do when it's sat for a little bit. And thankfully, I noticed that the rear carb was, leaking fuel. So I think the float has started sinking in the rear 2GC. It's happened once before on that same carb. I replaced the float, solved the problem, but lo and behold, it appears to have happened again. So. That being said, I am hoping that I can just pull this off, check it out, and see what's going on. Maybe it's just a stuck float this time, but I'm going to show you guys how to pull carb off of a Tri Power here and walk you through it. It's really easy, and figured I might as well get it on the footage for you. So let's get this thing started. Okay, so start by getting in here. There we go. Okay. So, it's this rear guy that's giving us the trouble. And basically, it's leaking from kind of where the gasket is here, which is similar to what happened last time. So, basically, I'm going to pull the carb off like I did last time, and, just check out the float and see if it's turned into a sink. So pretty easy for me. My vacuum line routing and linkage will probably be slightly different to yours. These things, end up being relatively custom from car to car, but the same principles, the fundamentals should at least be the same. So I'm going to start by disconnecting my vacuum lines to get them out of the way. Actually, it's just this one here. I got to just pop that back out of the way around there. And then I'm going to disconnect the rear part of my linkage here and just leave it kind of hanging in space for the time being. Then the last thing is I just got to disconnect my fuel feed right here as well. As you can see on my fuel gauge, I'm down to 0 psi. I let this thing sit overnight, and I also just kind of opened up the throttle blades here just so that the accelerator pump would kind of get out any of the last little fuel in there and kind of vent the pressure. So I'm going to get started and walk you through it, but again, it really is a super easy thing. Alright, so first up, we're going to remove this vacuum line that's in my way here. Again, you may not have this, and that's perfectly okay if you don't. There we go. And I'm just going to tuck that up and out of the way there. And I'm also going to let this spring, return spring that I have go as well, because that's going to need to come out anyway. So that gives me a little access to my 2 nuts on this side for the carb itself, but I'm also going to take off this linkage first. So in mine, these are both, the bolt and the nut are 3/8. And I just have a little ratcheting ring spanner, as this is a nylock nut, and those can take forever to get off if you don't have a ratcheting one. So I'm going to work on that, and as soon as I have these off, I'm going to start working on the actual base of the carb. Loosening these guys up, which are usually pretty easy. There we go. And you see I'm using the open end of the wrench here because there's not enough room to get the ring over the back. There we go. And it's always good to be extra careful to not drop your washer down into the mess of hoses and linkage. I've done that a few times. So I go slow, and I do them one at a time, just to make sure. Come on. There we go. Alright, now around to the other side. This side's a little easier, as the linkage really isn't too much in the way of the hardware. Of course, I left my wrench on the other side here. Here we go. Same deal. Super easy. Really, you can just get them started with the wrench, and then the rest you can kind of just do by hand. Right. And I should take a moment to point this out. So this little bracket right here, if you know what you're looking at, very cool. But this is what mounts my TV cable, which is a throttle valve cable, I believe. Basically, I have a 4-speed overdrive transmission in this car, and this is what tells it how to properly shift. This is from Bowtie Overdrives, and it's a really easy to work with unit. They have some really great instructions on how to calibrate it. This is the linkage that goes to the main carb, because obviously this is the one you want to be reading off of. And as you can see, it's very adjustable. So I've got it dialed in to where it shifts, you know, just right. It took a little bit of going through and some careful stuff to make sure trans pressures and everything were good up front, but now it's dialed in. I've not had a single issue with it, so just figured I'd point that out while we're in there. All right, I'm gonna get these washers off, and then we're gonna move on to disconnecting the fuel inlet over here. All right, so as you can probably see, I've put a microfiber underneath just to catch any fuel that decides to come out. And then I've got 2 wrenches. So the outer on mine is a 5/8 and the inner is a 9/16. So it should be as simple as just getting them started. Maybe I need to, there we go. Ooh, there it goes. And I don't have the fancy, soft pipe wrenches and all that, so as you can see, I am ever so slightly marring the brass fittings on here, but the thing with the Atomic Belle is she ain't perfect and she ain't supposed to be perfect. I want this stuff to be obvious that it's been used and worked on. Not everything needs to be, shiny, mint condition, show quality. It's the fun of it, right? So, not too bad. Looks like I managed to get the worst of the fuel at least out from the very top of the bowl here. And I'll try not to move this too much, being a hard line. I don't want to mess with the fitting lower down on the distribution block. So now I'm going to just try and move that out of the way so it doesn't interfere with the base when I lift this thing up. Should come right out. There you have it. 2GC, modified for use in a tripod. All right. Now, you'll definitely want to remember to keep these things pretty upright, because you do still have fuel in the fuel bowl, so if you tip it, it will pour fuel out, so just be careful, keep it the right way up. So I'm gonna go get this thing on the workbench and we're gonna go take a look at it. So I've got the thing set up in my little workshop here, and as you see, I put down a piece of craft paper just to have a nice and clean work surface. My workbench sees a lot, and albeit I don't think these things are that particular, a simple wipe down, if you get some dirt on the base of that, wouldn't that'd be plenty. It's using an old style gasket, they're pretty forgiving. But just to be safe, I am laying out parts that you do want to keep clean. Everything from inside of this, you should do your best to stop them from getting dirty, so I figured why not. First step here is going to be removing the little intake scoop that I have here. For me, that's just one set screw on the side, so I'm going to loosen that, pop this off. Then it'll be removing the lid, and if there's a proper term for that, please forgive me and shout it out in the comments. I would appreciate the learning experience there. So really, you're dealing with these flathead screws the whole way around. It appears that there's 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 of them. Wait, nope. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Hang on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 back here, and then 7, 8 of them. So yeah, 8 of these. And then oh yeah, and then you've got this little R clip down here on the linkage. I believe this is for the accelerator pump. That you just want to pop off and poke this back out through, because that will come off with the lid here. So that being said, I'm going to get started on that and get this little guy apart so we can take a look inside. Alright, so we got our lid off here. Thankfully my gasket is still in extremely good shape, considering I actually did this already recently, so this is a very new gasket. This would be a great time to replace the gasket on yours. If you're doing this and your carb hasn't been apart for quite a while, definitely just prepare to get, a new gasket, and, any of the basic little service items you might as well do while you're in here. So as you can see with the screws that I removed, one of them is longer, and it's relatively obvious when it goes together, but there's basically a thicker part of the top here that the longer screw goes through. So you'll see it's relatively near the inlet at the top. But basically you'll see a raised section on the top that has one of the screw holes in it, and that's where the longer screw goes. So if you get mixed up when you're putting it back together, you'll see where the long one goes pretty easily. So when I lifted it out, you saw this plunger basically kind of pulled out here. Do be careful when you're pulling that out. You just don't want to lose any of the little seals or anything. It should stay together, but just make sure it's not getting caught on anything. And you do have your little spring down in here as well. But this is the culprit. This is the float that I am thinking has turned into a sink. So that being said, removing the float from one of these is extremely easy. You have this little bar right here, and literally you just pull the bar through like that. Lose it underneath the carb. There we go. Put that right there, and the float comes out. But now you see in here, if I can get a shot of it, this little hook hooked on the side here. So that is your needle. And there we go. So just make sure you don't like flick this thing off and lose it, because it does just slide onto there. And as you can see, boom, it's just hanging on there. So that's my needle. And if you've ever heard someone say needle and seat, this is the seat. So basically, the float is what controls the up and down motion of those. Now for the test. If I shake this and it sloshes, then we know that it is no good. So, no slosh, which means it's not a bad float. So now I need to hunt around and see what the heck was causing this thing to flood out. So I'm going to do a little research, and we will see what we land on here. Alright, so on to day 2 of this. I had to take a brief break because I had a couple other things I needed to take care of last night. But coming back to the carb, so upon a quick inspection, like we saw, the float does not appear to have any fuel in it, so it's basically not going to be our culprit, which is, a good and a bad thing, right? If it was the culprit, I would have known exactly what to do. But this does lead me to believe that perhaps I either have the float adjusted incorrectly, or it could have just been that the needle was not closing all the way into the seat. So I'm going to do a quick cleaning and just get in there with just a little like Q-tip or something like that, and some carb cleaner just to make sure there's no debris stopping that from sealing up. I'm going to check to make sure the bracket is bent to the correct angle so that the float does close all the way. The float closes the needle and the seat all the way. And then pretty much I think my best shot here is going to just be carefully reassembling and making sure that the gasket and everything is sealed. So if we take a look here, all right. Oh, actually, hey, that works differently than I thought. There we go. Sorry guys, I'm getting the hang of the new camera. So this is the new float that I put in recently. And back in my mess here, I should have the old one. So I'm actually going to pull that out and put them side by side so you can see. And it'll be interesting to check and see how much of the fuel has evaporated out of the old float. That'll be a kind of a curiosity as well. So admittedly, my workshop is a bit of a mess at the moment, and I can't find the old float, so I can't really compare them side by side. But that being said, I did have another quick test that I could put together just to take a look and see if potentially it is the float being kind of out of adjustment. Essentially, again, where mine is leaking, it's actually coming out past the gasket here, which means the bowl is just filling and filling and filling, and then eventually it's got to have somewhere to go, so it's basically just leaking out. The gasket will hold it in to some degree, but it's not like perfectly sealed. So that being said, easy test is, okay, is the float sitting too high to where it's, you know, allowing the fuel to increase in level too much to where it comes up to the gasket. So again, this is tricky doing it with one hand. Hang on, let me see if I can. Still learning the new camera, guys, so I appreciate your patience. All right, so this is our needle right here, which has the little hook up on it. This is our float, and you see how it's got this little notch in the side. So the little hanger for the needle loops into that, and it just rests in place like that. So you see how it's kind of come up through the hole there. Hopefully this thing will focus. There we go. I think that's focused. I'm working with a screen the size of my thumbnail. But anyway, so those two parts are together. And basically, you've got your seat here. So you want to make sure your needle ends up inside of there. And then you need to put your little pivot point. Here we go. Through all four of the holes. You got the two outer mounting points and then the ones in the actual float itself. So you see how I'm working it up through there. There we go. It's out the other side. So that's now attached to its pivot point. But I figured this would be an easy way to test, right? So that's the maximum height of the float right there. That's the float maxed out. You see how you can see underneath it? So realistically, for the fuel to get out past the gasket here, it's literally fully submerging the float, which to me says that something is getting stuck in the needle and seat that's stopping it from sealing properly. So even though this thing's trying to close it and doing its best, something's allowing fuel to slip through anyway. So we're going to just give it a cleaning, and it may be as simple as that. It may just be that there's a little debris. And one thing I can say is these things are incredibly easy to remove, take apart, clean, put back together. So honestly, I'm actually, unlike other jobs that are more complicated, really not all that worried about, testing this thing out, like doing, putting it back together, putting it on the car and seeing if it worked. So I'm going to rebuild this thing, and we're going to see what we're going to do. Okay, so getting ready to go here while I have the carb off. It's going to take a second to clean a little bit of this dirt buildup that I can't really reach once it's in place. Just a little bit there. I think from where the fuel was leaking, a little bit of dirt kind of pooled in a little area on the bow tie overdrive's bracket here. Alright, there we go. So the base gasket still looks okay, so I think I'm all right there. Don't think that really needs a replacement. So we can now take the carb and put it in place. I'm going to see if I can do this one-handed. There we go. Roughly like that. It's a little bit offset because the fuel line, there it is. All right, cool. So basically I just plopped it on the gasket there, real easy. And I just needed to make sure that this little fuel line right here seated in there. So first things first, I am actually probably going to bolt the carb down first this time before tightening up the fuel line. It was a little tricky the other way around because the carb was moving. So I'm going to get that going now, and then we'll bolt the carb down and get the linkage reconnected. Room, or let's call it adjustment. Okay, same deal. Washer, nut, and seems pretty much happy right about there. It seems to be the place it wants to be. So I'm gonna get these down kind of just finger tight just to pin it. This one for me is extra fun because the bow tie overdrive's bracket does kind of bulk up the throttle lever on the center carb a little, so it actually kind of gets not super in the way of the wrench, but I just have to hold it at a specific angle to make sure it clears. Okay, I'm gonna go too tight on this side. I want to get the other side seated down, and then I'll probably just lift this side back up afterwards. That way it's got somewhat even distribution of pressure. And if you're just running a single 2GC, good on you, because you'll be done after this. Your life will be way easier. Albeit running the Tri Power, it's not really as bad as everyone says it is. I think a lot of people kind of blow it out of proportion how annoying they are to tune and maintain. It is more fiddly than just running like a 4-barrel or something like that. But frankly, it has been well worth it. The look, the sound, the performance have all been great, and honestly the period correctness has been nice as well. Alright, let's use these guys, just the last little crank here. Make sure we have a good seal. As being the secondaries, you definitely don't want to be leaking air in through these, because it will suddenly give you mysterious idle problems. These need to seal up nice and tight. Same with the butterflies inside. If those aren't sealing properly, you'll suddenly mysteriously have idle issues. Okay, so that's good. I made sure my accelerator pump linkage is hooked up, so I'm done on this side. So now, over here, we have an interesting thing I discovered, which is also, I think, part of where this whole thing stemmed from. These little linkages here that attach to the shaft for the secondaries are just basically a pressure fit. They just squeeze the shaft, and it is a smooth shaft. It is not splined. Frankly, they're garbage. If I could remember the brand that they were, I would tell you so that you could avoid buying them. Unfortunately, I don't know which ones they were, but if you're looking at ones that look like this, they are just not good. They can slip on the shaft, and I've just repeatedly found myself in the situation of having to readjust everything. You know, I had them dialed in relatively well last time, but I think that's the final straw of just relying on them working the way they're supposed to work. I'm probably going to readjust everything, get it where it needs to be, and then I'm probably actually going to tap through this shaft and out the other side and put a little set screw or something just to make sure they can't ever lose adjustment, because it is the most annoying thing ever when you think you got everything all dialed in and working right, and then suddenly they're out of adjustment and won't close properly, and all sorts of other fun stuff. So for now, this is actually opening my front carb because I've dialed this one back to a further back position. For today, I just want to get it running on the center carb before I adjust the outers back in. So what I'm going to do now is actually adjust this guy, and you'll see what I'm saying when I say they can slip. I'm literally just grabbing the linkage on the other side, and I just closed the butterflies using the linkage on this side and just held this in place. So that's obviously not great that it can do that, clearly. I mean, how is it supposed to open these things by pulling here, you know what I'm saying? So, anywho, I think that's good enough for now. I'm going to tighten this bad boy up. Again, on mine these are 3/8. Let's see if I get lucky with which direction the ratchet is going. Oh, look at that, it's twice in a row. And I forgot I put shorter bolts on these, so they're actually faster to tighten up than they used to be. I used to have like a stupidly long one on here. Almost there. And that's good. Cool. And being Heim joints, doesn't matter that this is nice and tight because these move freely. So, this guy. Okay. Same deal. This was my 9/16 and my 5/8. We're going to tighten these up. Back to being finger tight. Yes, there we go. Okay, there we go. I was thinking about showing you guys this in time lapse, but honestly, this would have ended up being about 5 seconds worth of footage in time lapse. Because as you can see, this stuff goes together pretty damn quick. So, almost done here. And if you're doing a Tri Power and you're running soft like flex lines, you don't even have to worry about what I'm doing right now. Okay, so that's probably tight enough, but I will double check that as soon as I kick the fuel pump on. So the last part is my little vacuum line right here, which I just need to make sure is routed out of the way of everything. Okay, there we have it. So I'm gonna go kick the fuel pump on and see if this thing leaks. All right, let's see what we've got. Don't mind that noise, that's the compressors kicking on. It's gonna take a minute for it to fill. Hopefully, it'll fill and then just stop. Okay, it's built pressure in the line, that's a good start. Not seeing any leaks. Before, it was coming out right here at the gasket, and I got nothing coming out right now. Just looking down the back of it, don't see any waterfall back there. Let's go check our other side. And with the volume that my electric fuel pump pushes, we would definitely know pretty quickly, because it should fill that fuel bowl very, very quickly. So I think we're probably good. So, guess I'll fire her up. There we go. All right, so she should. Yep. Little chunky, but she's idling. All right, let's see what we got. Well, she's running and there's no fuel leaking, so that's a good start. Ooh, one very important thing. Even though I do not plan on using my secondaries anytime soon, return spring. Safety first, everyone. There we go. I'm pretty sure that that's completely NSRA legal right there. Alrighty, but that'll guarantee that those two stay closed. Don't get any funny ideas. Nice. Alright, very cool. So now, Yep. My neighbors must love me. One of my new favorite things with the side exit exhaust. Leaf blower. Well, hopefully that was helpful. Basically, showed you a basic check on what to do if your 2GC is flooding. 2G should be very similar, the only difference being a 2GC would come with a choke normally, albeit mine are removed. So that being said, if this video was helpful to you, please like, subscribe, and if you're not already, follow the channel. Got some great Bel Air content. Obviously, you guys have probably seen some of the Jaguar content we're doing as well, which is very cool. And yeah, we always appreciate it, and we'll see you on the next one.